Hey everyone, hope you guys are having a great day today. I almost actually pushed this episode because of some breaking news. So I'm going to actually start off with that before we get into everything else, because this is a pretty big one. Um, this is basically it. This was just a few minutes ago, about 30 minutes ago. Stephen Stearns has officially been charged for the murder of 13-year-old Madeline Soto. So there's a few things to talk about with this. The first thing is we have been waiting for a while for this murder charge to drop. It finally has. That's great. This is in addition to the 60 other charges that he has for CSA, lewd and lascivious acts on a child, and oh my gosh, what was the other one? I forget what the other one was, but you know what he did to Madeline. Now, because it's Florida, and now he's got this murder charge, he's now facing the death penalty twice. Florida passed a law in December or November, late last year, that if you are a child under the age of 11 or 11 and under, you can be eligible for the death penalty. And Stephen Stearns did to Madeline. And so he's eligible for the death penalty for that. And now for the homicide charge. Now, Stephen Stearns was also due in court today. He has a pretrial hearing. And he was not there. His lawyer was there, and his lawyer entered a not guilty plea on the 60 charges because the murder charge hadn't come out yet. At the time, the attorney also asked for a trial to be put on date. So they put a trial date of August 9th on the docket with a pretrial hearing set for July 10th. I would imagine with this new information, it'll probably get moved, but that is where we are for right now. I don't think that there's going to be a way or a scenario, unless he somehow pleads down, which I doubt they'll do because the evidence is overwhelming, that he's not going to be facing the death penalty during trial, and he'll probably get it. And just, my personal opinion, which I should probably leave out, is I think he should. He should get it. But that's the big news that we have today. That's what we're going to open with. This just happened. We have been waiting and waiting for this to happen, and I'm glad to see him finally get hit with that charge. In fact, the press conference is probably going on right now, but I don't think it's going to be much more than this. But if there is, of course, I'll be back with an update and let y'all know all that. So with that said, let me get through the promotional stuff that we got to do. First, a lot of y'all know I have a podcast. We're going to do this really quick because if you tune in this regularly, you know what these are and what I'm going to say. Everything that I'm about to talk about is on JustIn on TikTok.com. So 50 words for murder. I have seen some of y'all following to that on Spotify, and I appreciate it. A lot of the episodes that we do, not these daily, this just in, at least not now. But most of the interviews and stuff we do go to the podcast at some point in time, usually not far after we record them. So 50 words for murder. You can go to justinontiktok.com, scroll down, and you will get to it. The next thing is two additional things. One is I've written 2 books, Boundaries and Surprises Are Okay, Secrets Are Not. Boundaries is basically exactly what it sounds. Teaches your kids boundaries, but also, and the reason I wrote it is I'm no contact with my own mother, limited with my father. My daughter started asking questions. I was looking for a resource, didn't have one. Spoke to therapists, found out that one didn't exist. So with a little bit of guidance from them and looking it over, we came up with this book, and it's been phenomenal. Sales have been great. Feedback's been great. So you can get that at TikTok Shop or justontiktok.com. And then Surprise RK Secrets or Not, newest one. And I really can't push this one enough because both of these books are great tools for parents to have in their arsenal. But when you look at things like Madeline Soto, you look at the show that we did last night with that 7-year-old girl who spoke up and used her voice. I'm actually going to have on Thursday a girl, well, she's a woman now, but named Cammie, who was AR'd at a party when she was 16. Judge overturned the conviction because the judge felt the guy was in enough trouble from already sitting in jail and overturned an R conviction. So we're going to have her on Thursday to explain that. But all of these people use their voice, and the purpose of this book, the design of this book, is to teach your kids how to use their voice. So last thing I got to talk about is this. you are new here, first time watching, whatever, hit that subscribe button, smash it, um, follow the channel. That's all. So, without further ado, let's get into some of the things we got to talk about because there is a lot today that we are going to talk about. And the first thing I want to start out with outside of Madeline, again, Madeline was not planned. The Stephen Stearns charge was not planned. That literally came moments before we went live. But this. So a lot of y'all probably heard what was going on in Washington yesterday regarding the guy. And this is just this story. In fact, I might even have to pull something up for me to do this one. But basically, this guy went to his ex-wife's school where she worked, uh, elementary school in Washington, and fired on her 8 times, taking her life in front of their 9-year-old son. Okay. He had then already kidnapped his other son that he had with another girl. Notice I'm saying girl, not woman, with another girl. And he went on the run. And when police served a search warrant, they found another body who they've not confirmed who the body for that one is. I'm guessing, well, I'll get to that in a second. I'm not going to put myself too far ahead. But a child, there had been an Amber Alert issued in both Washington and Oregon. He had been spotted in Oregon at the Plaid Pantry getting a drink. The person there noticed a child in the backseat of the car, called authorities to let them know. And it is believed, or was believed, that he was trying to get to Mexico with the child. What ended up happening was he was spotted. A police pursued, was engaged. And he ended up crashing. And by the time they got to him, he had already taken his own life. The bad part about that is he will not face any type of accountability. And the good part about that is I guess it's not a burden for the taxpayers, I guess. But there's more to it than just that. So apparently he was supposed to be in court that day or the next day for an R charge against a 16-year-old who was his girlfriend's friend. And if you're asking why would his girlfriend, this is a 40-year-old man or almost 40-year-old man, 39, why would this man's girlfriend be friends with a 16-year-old girl? Well, because the girlfriend was 17. And what we had learned yesterday, which I can clarify a little bit more today, is he apparently had been in a relationship with this girl who is now 17 for several years. Well, he impregnated that girl when she was 15, and they had the baby that he kidnapped or abducted. But apparently he met this girl when she was 11. All right. 11. So when I say it's not too bad that he's gone, his victims won't get justice. And even though they haven't released it, the word on the street, nothing official, nothing confirmed, but people who are in that area are saying that it is the 17-year-old girlfriend who was found unalived in the home. Again, when we have more updates, I'll make sure to update you guys on that. But absolutely tragic story for the families that were involved. Absolutely terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So next thing we're going to talk about is this, and I'm going to tell y'all right now that this is a very disturbing story. Okay, I did this one on TikTok about an hour and a half ago, and it was so disturbing that I was like, well, I have to come on and talk about this here. Okay, so this woman in the picture is Cheyenne Hill, and she was just sentenced to 30 years in prison for the death of her 18-month-old. And you can read the headline here. Bedford mom who called her dying toddler an a-hole was sentenced to 30 years. Well, it was more than just that. Okay. So calling the child, the little girl, an a-hole, 18-month-old girl, was actually one of the nicer things she did. And before I get into exactly what happened and how she passed, what I will tell you is that she compared this child to Jeffrey Dahmer. Apparently that was a regular occurrence in text message and verbally. 18 months old. She once told a neighbor that her daughter was going to kill someone one day. While the little girl was in the hospital, she told the Indiana Donor Network Family Service representative that her daughter was not a nice kid and that something wasn't right with her. She also has been known to blame the 18-month-old as the reason that her boyfriend wouldn't marry her. Okay. So that's just some of it. And apparently, this all came about because a witness was very concerned about the child, noticed some facial swelling and bruising, and said, "Hey, you should take this kid to the hospital. She doesn't look right." And this mother, Cheyenne, I'm going to say Cheyenne. Cheyenne responded by saying, "Under no circumstances are you to call an ambulance or take her in yourself. She is my child. I will make the decisions." So eventually, she ends up taking the child to the hospital, but it was under the instruction of her boyfriend. Her boyfriend was like, you really need to take this kid in. It's she's not looking good. So she finally does, and when she gets there, of course, they call authorities, and authorities talk to her, and they noticed that basically she had um, facial bruising, brain bleed, broken collarbone, and then also head and facial bruising. She was also very malnourished. Now, while this little girl was laying in the hospital in a serious state, apparently this woman would continue to go to work. This didn't care at all. And then when investigators asked her, like they asked her, um, how could you compare your daughter to a serial killer like Jeffrey Dahmer, especially in time of crisis, like while she's fighting for her life? And apparently, she just started laughing about it and called her dying daughter an asshole. Apparently, they also obtained text messages where she talked about wanting to throw the child because the child wouldn't stop talking. Again, 18 months old, guys. 18 months old. So she's been sentenced to 30 years. She gets to spend the next 3 decades, hopefully, behind bars. Just absolutely horrific story, but I feel there needs to be awareness about it. These are tough stories to talk about. I know y'all don't want to hear about them. I don't want to read them. This one's terrible. This is definitely ranks up there in some of the worst that I've talked about. But the awareness about it is important because you had a child who had to endure this, and I think the least that we can do sometimes is to listen to it, to give some type of validation to it. But I'm glad that she's being held accountable, is what I can say on that. So the next topic we're going to talk about, or two topics, I should say, that we're going to talk about, are going to be very similar. And one of them is going to turn into an interview tonight with the victim's mother. So I'm going to start with this one here. By now, a lot of y'all have heard about this Tumblr incident at a middle school in Pennsylvania. Okay. Apparently, it was a completely unprovoked attack. Students were traumatized. Blood was everywhere. One student went on record on, I forget what station, saying that she could just hear all the screaming and everybody running, and then all of a sudden you just heard these loud bangs because it was a Stanley Cup, these big Stanley Cups bouncing off the head of another student, and then they had to sit there. The students had to sit there and watch them clean up blood off the tables and the ground, and they had to watch them take the child out, the girl out, the 13-year-old girl with blood dripping down her face. And this will happen at Pembroke Middle School in North Wales, Pennsylvania. And the parents, rightfully so, I think, are slamming the administration and slamming the school for not doing enough because they had warning signs. Okay. The attacker in this situation apparently, allegedly, had a hit list of students that she planned to target. Apparently, seventh graders had gone to the counselor, the guidance counselor, to talk about that they had heard something was going to happen at lunch, but the school officials failed to act. This event was entirely preventable. Kids started texting their parents. Parents are worried because if you're at school, or you're at work, your kids are at school, the last thing you want to get is a text from your mom or from your kid, sorry, like, "Mom, help, there's blood everywhere. Help, Mom, I'm scared," because these are texts that were being sent out by these students. Apparently, the police are saying that this was a completely unprovoked, sudden, and violent attack. And basically, what happened is the aggressor came up behind a 12-year-old classmate and began to hit her in the head with the Stanley Cup, um, just over and over and over again. Afterwards, the school was put on lockdown for about 8 minutes, giving time for police and first responders to arrive. Um, it's terrible. But the thing is, with this whole situation, um, there were a lot of signs. There were multiple complaints about this one girl, about this one student. Um, Another student said she voiced concerns to school officials after this bully threatened her own daughter. And they're saying if these complaints, these multiple complaints from students, from parents, were taken seriously, this attack could have been prevented. Um, the thing is that the attacker was also a new student who had just started Monday, 2 days prior to that incident. She'd only been at the school 2 days. And the reason she was at that school late in the year is because she was expelled from her previous school over alleged violent incidences. Apparently, somebody came out and said that basically that this individual brandished at their old school a knife at her son and his friends, and that happened off school. Sorry, it happened off school grounds, but the school was aware of it. In a letter to the parents, the superintendent is denying the fact that this student was transferred to the new school due to violent attacks. However, parents who went to the old school are pretty adamant that that is why this student was no longer there, that this student was a problem and they were expelled. Now, police are saying that currently that this student in this situation will likely face several charges, including felony aggravated assault. So this person is obviously violent. They're obviously unhinged. They need to have something done. My guess is the victim is okay at this point, based on what I read. As okay as you could be. There's going to be PTSD, and you're going to be shaken up. But did survive. Had to get staples, I believe, in her head. But again, completely unprovoked. Very violent attack with a tumbler. And then if you were here yesterday, and I'm going to give you all a trigger warning real quick, although I'm starting to get to a point, and I'm just going to be very candid with y'all. I'm starting to get to a point where I'm thinking about moving away from trigger warnings. And the reason for that is these victims didn't get trigger warnings. So why should we? If these victims had to endure the things that we're talking about, why should we have to have a trigger warning to hear their story? I mean, I get it, but I'm just saying. So let me know what you think about that. You've seen me talk about this person the last couple of days, and we're going to have her mom on tonight. I'm not going to give the student's name. This is a blurred picture that I'm going to show you. But this student right here, this happened this week in Franklin, Kentucky. And so far, I've not been able to find very much on the actual news. I know that in Nashville, where I live, one of our digital journalists posted about this with this blurred photo because the real ones, the non-blurred ones, are pretty brutal, and we're just not going to show those on social media. But this gives you an idea. People thought that there was so much blood that they thought it was red paint that was poured on this child's head. So this girl right here is 14 years old, and she goes to school in Franklin, Kentucky. And apparently on the way home the other day on the bus, another student behind her allegedly was making fun of her for having autism, calling her the R word for, the mentally slower R word, which we don't use, very incorrect, and then started to smash this child, this 14-year-old girl, over the head with a tumbler cup, which I will show you that tumbler cup in a second because it's pretty hardcore dented. Now, yesterday, the information that I had, and I might have misunderstood from the person who introduced me to the mom, or I didn't ask the right questions, but apparently I had initially thought or had initially said that the attacker in this case was 16 years old, but apparently they are both freshmen. So they're same grade, same age, within a reasonable time frame. This is kind of the aftermath on her head. And this is the tumbler. So this is a metal tumbler. She posted this, the bully posted this to Snapchat saying, I beat her with this. And it was pointed out to me yesterday that I believe that straw is there basically to kind of show how dented it is. But hitting somebody in the skull with a metal tumbler over and over to the point that it bleeds the way that her head bled and that it dents a tumbler, that's pretty hardcore. It's pretty hardcore. So that's this is a tough story. Um, I have a feeling we're going to be seeing tumblers, Stanley Cups banned from schools here in the very near future. Again, 2 incidents like this in a week. That's a lot. We're going to have the mother of this student on tonight at 9:30 p.m. Central. And if you can't make that because you're in bed or whatever, you can catch it on here on YouTube. It'll be saved, and then that'll be an episode that ends up getting rolled over into a podcast. So you'll be able to watch it at that time as well. But this is why I kind of said at the beginning when we talk about bullying, and I talked about the book Surprises Are Okay, Secrets Are Not, because one of the things in there that we talk about, aside from not letting adults have kids keep secrets for them, there's jumping off points and talking about when kids should speak up in the Q&A part. And one of those is when you see another kid getting bullied. If kids are getting bullied, you can't stand by and let it happen. Because for those of y'all who are watching this, for I would say 98% of us, we didn't go to school the way that these kids go to school. What I mean by that is that when we went to school and we dealt with bullying, one is the bullying was completely different, but two, you got to escape it. At the end of the day, when you went home during the summer, you escaped it. But now with social media, with cell phones, it is 24/7. And what we learned the other night from our guest, from Rachel's Challenge, is that during the pandemic, the numbers of cyberbullying skyrocketed. And now that the pandemic is over, we've gone back to school, that number didn't come down. So now these kids are not only getting bullied in person at school, but then they come home and they get cyberbullied. And you can't imagine the mental health toll that this takes on these kids. So it's really important to stand up. We didn't have to deal with this, so it's kind of harder for us to understand and put ourselves in the shoes that our kids or your grandkids are in, because again, it was a very different time. And now it's 24/7. So the point is we need more students, more kids speaking up on behalf of other kids. One of the biggest things lately with AI, just so y'all know, is apparently there are middle schools recently, and I didn't do any videos on this, but I'll mention here, but apparently there are middle schoolers that are taking AI and doing deep fakes of the middle school girls in compromising positions or not clothed, or, take what you want from that. And that's something else that now these kids are having to deal with. And it's brutal and it's horrific, and parents need to know about it, number one, but kids need to stand up for it, because look, we have the gift of hindsight. If you're out of high school, you're out of college, you can look back at those days and be like, I would have done this different. I have my whole life ahead of me. This was just a small blip. But when you're talking to a kid under the age of 18 who has basically been in school their entire life, 1, 2, 3 years to be away from this, that seems like an eternity. And when that's the entire world you've known, then you can sit and say, hey, in college, it'll get better. When you graduate, it'll get better. In 5 years, you won't remember any of this. Well, you probably will, but it will be better. But in that moment, those words mean nothing to them. So the goal is, again, with the one book, and I'm not, buy it, don't buy it, whatever, but have a conversation at the very least. But the goal of the book was basically to help kids not keep secrets, to learn to speak up. I am going to be doing a bullying book at some point in the near future. I would expect it to be out within the year, next year, within a year from now is my goal. But it's hard. And these kids, they already struggle with so much. They already have so much on their plate. They don't go to school like we did, guys. So anyways, this is what I had for the day. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm going to try to do these every day. Next week might be a little tight. I'm going to be out of town, but We have some great interviews coming up this week. Like I said, we have the mother of this girl. I'll put it back up real quick, from Kentucky. She's going to be on tonight to give a lot of details. We're going to ask a lot of questions of this situation and what could have been done at the school differently, because the school handled it very poorly. I didn't get into the details. We're going to wait till night, but the school handled it very poorly and let that girl off the bus walk home bleeding profusely, concussed because she had a severe concussion. And the school really has handled it poorly. The police have handled it poorly, and we're going to talk about that tonight with the mom, so make sure to tune in for that. Then tomorrow night, we have a woman. Her name is Cammie. You can follow her on Facebook, Stand With Cammie. And basically, she is a victim of R. She was in high school at a party, 16 years old. She had drank a little bit, and she woke up to a guy on top of her. When she told him no, he wouldn't stop, but she used her voice. She spoke up. He was sentenced, and then the judge overturned it. The judge overturned it. He decided that this young man had his whole life ahead of him, and his 3 months that he spent in jail was more than enough punishment for doing what he did to this girl. But Cammie still fights, and she uses her voice, and she's going to be on tomorrow night. So you're definitely going to want to not miss that. And then I'm working on Friday. I don't want to give away what that is yet, but if I get it buckled up tonight or tomorrow, y'all will know. But that's going to be a pretty good one too. That I will just kind of give you a teaser. If you follow me on TikTok, or you follow London's Notebook on TikTok, this is a case that London sent to me and asked me to lend my platform for. So we're going to do that. Do just that. Anyways, hope you guys have a great afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are, whenever you're watching this. And we will see you guys later tonight.